Today we continue to listen Ariyavasa Sutta, the abode of noble ones. Ariya means noble ones, Avasa means residence or abode. So the abode of noble ones, Ariyavasa. All the previous Buddhas and noble ones in the past we see Buddha, Sikhi Buddha, Visapu Buddha, Kakusanda Buddha, Gondagamana Buddha, Kasaba Buddha, and his noble disciple dwelt in this Ariyavasa. In the same way, our Gautama Buddha and his noble disciple in the current holy order have been dwelling in this Ariyavasa. And future Buddhas, Arimitiya Buddhas and his disciple will dwell in that Ariyavasa. So Ariyavasa refers to important qualities required to become a noble ones. In other words, each and every noble one dwells in Ariyavasa, which is well guarded from the danger of torturous cycle of samsara. So the abode of noble ones provides us refuge from all kinds of potential danger in samsara. To help us attain such great refuge in samsara, Buddha delivered this sermon. So we are delivering this sermon on behalf of the Buddha. So we have to keep it in mind. You listen to this talk attentively. Just as wealthy or powerful people keep guards at their houses to ensure their security, in the same way, there must be a guard at the abode of noble ones. Here, what a single guard means, Buddha poses a question before he gives answer in this way. Ita bhekkhve bhikkhu sattarakkhina cetasa samanagato hoti. Buddha asks bhikkhus, how is a bhikkhu endowed with a single guard? And Buddha answered, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu is endowed with the mind guarded by mindfulness. Sattarakkhina cetasa samanagato hoti. The guard at the abode of noble ones is sati, mindfulness. If you want to dwell there, you need to have your mind guarded by mindfulness. In this sense, Buddha said, a bhikkhu is endowed a mind guarded by the mindfulness. It is only an arahant, a fully enlightened person, who can be endowed with perfect mindfulness. Arahant is mindful of whatever he does physically, verbally, or mentally. So the minds of Arahant is well guarded by mindfulness. He is mindful constantly. So Arahant never does anything bad. He never speaks anything wrong or harmful to other people. And Arahant never think of anything sinful. That is why an Arahant is praised in this way in the Michima Panasa Pali text, whether going, standing, sleeping, or awakening, he is endowed with knowledge and vision. In this paragraph, there includes sleeping, but it is rather impossible, and it may refer to his mindfulness just before falling asleep and immediately after waking up. So when he totally falls asleep, it is impossible for mindfulness or insight knowledge to arise. For sure, it does not mean that in any case we should know that Arahants always has his thoughts guarded by mindfulness, no matter whatever he is doing, speaking, or thinking of. Mindfulness does not immediately lead to the full enlightenment, Rata Mega, like something that suddenly appears out of nowhere, but it gradually develops to its peak. Arahant attains perfect mindfulness thanks to the mindfulness he had developed as an anagami. In the same way, an anagami mindfulness is almost perfect, but that is also attributed to the mindfulness he had developed as Sakadagami. And again, Sakadagami's mindfulness must be credited to the mindfulness developed as a Sotapanna. Of course, Sotapanna's mindfulness is very remarkable in comparison with that of Putujana, common people. Thanks to such significant mindfulness, Sotapanna's mental defilements are never strong enough to commit evil deeds that can lead him to woeful states. Sotapanna state has certain kinds of mental defilements, kilesa, such as passion, sensual desire, kamaraga, aversion, vyavada, delusion, moha, and conceit, mana, and so on. But the defilements of Sotapanna are never strong enough to commit evil deeds like killing, stealing, etc. So they decrease both in degree and frequency because Sotapanna has a mind guided by powerful mindfulness. If you are a practitioner, you can realize it from your own experience. But if you are not a yogi, then you have to accept it by faith. At least you need to have faith in what the Buddha himself spoke in praise of Sotapanna. The Buddha said that a Sotapanna never does any demerits, akusala, that can lead him to woeful states. Yogis have practiced mindfulness, and so it is sure that what the Buddha said above Sotapanna is true. So if you want to realize this fact from your own experience, we have to encourage you to put effort in the development of mindfulness. If you develop mindfulness to a remarkable extent, you will realize how well it acts in nature as a vigilant guide. Let us elaborate this point. Sotapanna would crave for an object if desirable and would be adverse against it if undesirable, because Sotapanna is not yet free from lobha and dosa, greed and hatred. But Sotapanna always becomes mindful of such unwholesome states and keeps them under control before they become violent. So their defilements would lose their momentum and never go violent, unlike in the case of Putujana, common people. Because the kinds of unwholesome mental state arise, Sotapanna can capture the kinds of mental states. For sure, Sotapanna would be lustful or angry occasionally, but their defilements are never strong enough to make him capable of killing, stealing, telling lies, harmful to others' well-beings. So Buddha said that Sotapanna does not commit any evil deeds that can lead him to woeful states. So the guard at the Ariyavasa is sati, mindfulness. So how you develop your mindfulness? You follow the instruction of the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So the instruction to our meditators is the Buddha Satipatthana method. It is very simple. It requires us just to be mindful of all psychophysical phenomena that are manifested at the six sense doors: eye door, ear door, nose door, tongue door, body door, and mind door. However, in the beginning, Yogi cannot note every phenomenon manifested. So we recommend yogis to start the practice with limited objects, just with the rising and falling of the abdomen, because as many dedicated meditators affirmed, it is the easiest object to note among others, and also ensure uniformity among the yogis. Of course, you can start with any phenomenon as manifested at any of the six senses. Nothing can be wrong it if it is obvious enough to be aware of. So yogi can start the practice with the observation of seeing, or you can start with hearing or smelling or tasting or touching on any parts of your body, like head, leg, or any parts else. You can also start with mindfulness with thoughts. We never mention any phenomena as the wrong objects for vipassana, as long as it represents five aggregates, khandha, comprising the psychophysical phenomena, nama-rupa. So long as you are observing nama-rupa, five aggregates, you are right. So for the reason, we instruct yogi to start their practice with the abdominal movement, in which the air elements prevails in terms of motion, tightness, or pressure. So the rising and falling of the abdomen is all about air elements, one of the four primary elements. The commentary recommends us to start vipassana with the observation of four primary elements. On the other hand, we can start with observations of jhanic mental states. If you practice vipassana on the basics of samatha, jhanic concentration, but the vipassana we practice here is pure vipassana. So we are supposed to start with the four primary elements. Among the four, Pathavi Dhatu, other elements can be experienced. You can experience as hardness or softness. Now you are touching, your hand touching something. What you feel? You feel hardness or softness. You can start vipassana with hardness and softness also. And if you pay attention to the touching, how do you feel? Temperature, hot, cold, or warm. It is fire elements. You may start with fire elements also. Sometimes you experience wetness or fluidity, that is water elements. You can start with Abode also, if obvious enough. In brief, you can observe any phenomena if obvious enough. Yata Bhagata Vipassana Biniveso. Vipassana focus on whatever obvious. There is commentary. Mention. According to this commentary on Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, Visuddhimagga Mahadika, we should begin Vipassana with what is obvious and simple, but not with what unobvious or subtle. Practice of meditation is like the process of learning. We have to start with easy lessons, but not with difficult ones. For example, in the monastic education, it is impossible for us to learn patana, abhidhamma. Patana is the seventh book of Abhidhamma that deals with interrelationship of all kinds of phenomena, ultimate or conceptual, in a very extensive manner. So Patana is considered the toughest subject among the Pali text. How can a child begin his education with a difficult subject? So the Buddha's Vipassana meditation is very simple. It can be just to be mindful of four bodily postures: going, standing, sitting, or lying down. In this regard, the Buddha said, Gichantowa gichamiti pajanati. When going, he knows I'm going. This instruction is so simple that some people doubt about whether it is the Buddha's teaching. If it were not the words of the Buddha, they would have rejected it outright. Yet they wish to argue even over the Buddha's teaching and try to interpret in their own way. So they criticize that you would look awkward if you know going. And moreover, they said you would be aware of going just in a conventional sense, but not in an ultimate sense. Their criticism is exactly wrong. It is exactly what the Buddha said, which needs nobody's revision. If the Buddha had intended to emphasize the ultimate phenomena, that is Namarupa, mind and body, then Buddha would have said like this, Kichandowa Namarupanti Pajanati. When going, he knows mind and body. In reality, Buddha just mentioned that when going, he knows I'm going. So what the most venerable Lady Sayadaw said in his book called Anatta Divini, in this way, when going, you have to note every step as I go, I go. with the mind focused on the feet. Not a single step would be taken without mindfulness. Here I go is the exact translation of the Pali sentence, Gichami, but not his own interpretation. While noting I go, however, you will become correctly aware of physical movement and the mind that generates it. When your mindfulness is continuous and your concentration gets strong enough. That is why we just ask yogi to note going, going in a short form instead of full sentence, I'm going, I'm going. In the same way, we ask yogi to note concurrently any activities they do, like lifting the foot, moving it forward, putting it down, and so on. This is the easiest method, requiring only bare awareness. So when sitting, yogi may note sitting, sitting, according to Masatipatthana Sutta, Nisenowa, Nisenomiti Pajanati. But noting sitting, sitting would be monotonous or boring to note such a single object for long. As an alternative, we recommend you to note rising and falling of the abdomen, because noting the rising and falling of the abdomen is obvious, easy to note, and not as monotonous. By noting so, we guarantee you can develop Vipassana insight knowledge. Some beginner meditators and people who have overheard our talks are skeptical about whether this is a really effective way to the development of insight knowledge. Their skepticism is not surprising since they have never tried this method, nor do they have any clear idea of what insight meditation is about. So they are practicing just by faith. Initially, they cannot discern psychophysical phenomena, not to mention to see them arising and disappearing, although their teacher said they would. So yogi becomes skeptical about the efficacy of the mindfulness meditation. This means they arrive at the crossroads, wavering, indecisive, and hesitating to follow the method. This is vicikiccha, doubt that forms a hindrance to our practice. As a result, they stop developing the mindfulness and they are thus disqualified for the abode of noble ones and have to get back to the house of Putujana common people where they are unprotected. At this moment, if they were to die with lingering attachment to a sensual object, they are most likely to land in the lower realms, exactly like a monk by the name of Tesa, who was reborn as a louse because of attachment to his robe. It is exactly like a trader who gets killed at the crossroads because he is uncertain and fails to take the right turn before too late. If you are skeptical about the Satipatthana method and fail to practice it, then there will be no chance for you to attain any vipassana insight knowledge, let alone Megaphala and Nibbana. Thus, you will remain liable to be reborn in woeful states and to suffer all kinds of woes such as aging, sickness and death and so on throughout the samsara cycle of rebirths. That is why Buddha encouraged yogis to get rid of skeptical doubt, vicikicca. So Master Sayadaw have this aphorism: doubt is the crossroads. If you are there, note and remove it. So you need to remember this. There's still much to be said about the hindrances to enlightenment. In short, all we have to do is just note and remove them as soon as they arise. In this way, our minds get purified, citta visuddhi of them. They are barrier to mental developments, vipassana. It is like shutting down the gate to Nibbana. For example, suppose there is a gate that is too narrow for two persons get through at the same time. And so when one person gets in, the other person cannot get in or out. In the same way, when wholesome consciousness arises, unwholesome consciousness cannot arise. And also when unwholesome consciousness arises, wholesome consciousness cannot arise. Because consciousness, good or bad, arises one at a time, but not two or more at the same time. In the same way, when mindfulness arises, no evil thoughts can raise. And also when mental hindrances arises, no mindfulness can raise. In this way, our minds become pure through the mindfulness. When there arise Nivarana hindrances, namely sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and skeptical doubt, there cannot arise mindfulness or there cannot arise any mental development. Then the mental hindrances would become very strong and authoritative. It is like commanding the Bhavana Citta to stop. Hey Bhavana, you stop right there. it will say like this. So that is how they hinder bhavana development. So long as there is mental hindrances, there is no mental purity. The mind can by no means be purified if mental hindrances often interrupt the mindfulness. If you have ever practiced, you can understand it very well. Many people do not practice meditation because they consider their minds are pure by means of wholesome deeds. They say they perform charity, whatever they can, and also they observe moral precepts. They say they don't kill, they don't steal, they don't tell lie, etc. And then they do recitation of Dharma, and they worship in Triple Gem, and so on. All kinds of merits they doing. If asked why not meditate, they would reply that their minds are pure enough. They never do anything evil. They never think of anything uh, destructive to other people's well-beings. Nevertheless, they quickly realize how unruly and polluted their minds is when they take up mindfulness meditation. In this regard, Mahasi Sayadaw said, at one time, a yogi who practiced mindfulness under the guidance of Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, and Mahasi Sayadaw gave the instruction as usual, that is, begin the practice by noting the rising and falling of the abdomen as your home object. And note every phenomenon occurring at the six senses. Mahasi Sayadaw gave instruction to that yogi. Shortly thereafter, yogi complained of her mental distraction. She said that at home, her mind did not give any trouble. But since the day she started meditating in the meditation center, she had much trouble coping with unwholesome thoughts. Of course, she didn't know. It was simply naive of her to think that her mind was always pure at home. Then Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw encouraged that yogi in this way. O yogi, it is actually an indication that you now start to be aware of your mind. You never observe your mind at home, so you are not aware of your thoughts, good or bad, and so you think your mind is pure. Now you are practicing meditation, you are developing mindfulness, and you start to be aware of every arising mental state. You are screening every arising mental state. And you may think of something unwholesome at one moment, but you become aware of it at the next. Without mindfulness, whether the mind gets pure or impure cannot be known. Like a kitchen cloth that gets stained so much that any more stain cannot be seen on it. Ordinary people don't care whether their thoughts are pure or impure, so their minds often get stained with sensual desire, anger and frustration and so on. But they think their minds are pure because they are rarely mindful of their thoughts. Now with development of mindfulness, they become aware of mental impurity distantly because they capture the mental states immediately as soon as they arise. So it is like a stain that manifests itself distinctively on a lily white handkerchief. In the same way, unwholesome thoughts become captured immediately through the mindfulness. Gold always looks beautiful, but its quality can only be judged against the touchstone. In the same way, the nature of mind can only be known through the practice of mindfulness. Wandering mind or wild mind means impure mind. By developing mindfulness, yogi can be aware of its nature and can purify it of mental hindrances. A meditator can testify it from experience. So every moment of mindfulness means moments of the mind to be purified of mental defilements. When yogis are able to be mindful continuously, say for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, by noting one object after another, continuously, like counting one rosary bead after another, you will find your mind purified of such mental hindrances as sensual desire, aversion, laziness, wandering mind, and skeptical doubt. So this is the mental purification, Citta Visuddhi. Some scholars overlook this way of mental purification and believe that only jhanic concentration can mean Citta Visuddhi, mental purification. But this jhana-induced mental purification is all about the uninterrupted concentration, focus on a certain meditative object, which is therefore called samatha babandha samadhi. And the other kinds of mental purification is about momentary concentration that comes along with vipassana insight. Vipassana Khanika Samadhi developed through the moment by moment mindfulness. However, in essence, both jhanic concentration and vipassana concentration, purifying the mind by keeping mental hindrances away. Through such mental purification, yogi can become aware of mental and physical phenomena distinctively. So now we will explain how yogi will discern them by noting the rising and falling of the abdomen, whether some people like or dislike it. We will begin with the rising and falling of the abdomen. Many people don't like it at first, but when they try the practice on the advice of other yogis, they found this method quite satisfying, so much so that they even blame those yogis whose criticism had misled them before. The mindfulness meditation certainly appeals to those who have seriously followed it because it directly helps them to discern ultimate phenomena. Just as we know the heat of fire, the sweetness of sugar, etc., from experience, so also we can know from experience whether this method is right or not. In fact, when we tell the yogis to focus on the rising and falling of the abdomen, the instruction is, in essence, the Buddha's teaching. The rising and falling of the abdomen signify the air elements, Vayodhatu, one of the physical phenomena that belong to the physical aggregates. Its characteristics is pressure, Vitambana Lakkhana, which you can discern when you are aware of air elements. A Vipassana yogi is to observe mental and physical phenomena. How do we observe them? Do we observe them by name, by number, or by shape? No, not by name, because names are just concepts. Not by number either, since it is not necessary to count how many physical or mental phenomena are there. Some people contemplate phenomena by shape or form as minute particles appearing cluster by cluster. But shape is conceptual phenomena manifested based on color and formation, but not an ultimate phenomena, any of mental or physical phenomena. So for example, how can it be possible for you to observe sound, smell, or taste in shape as minute particles appearing cluster by cluster? Even if material objects may lend themselves to such observation, the same cannot be said of mind and its mental factors, such as lobha, passion, dosa, aversion, and so on. For example, when there arises raga, passion, or dosa, aversion in you, it is impossible for you to observe it as minute particles appearing cluster by cluster. In reality, we can only discern namarupa, psychophysical phenomena, in terms of their characteristics, function, or manifestation. That is what the Pali text say, but not what we say. Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, says in this way: Lakkhana rasadi vasena praghetaba. Namarupa should be grasped, or Namarupa should be comprehended in terms of characteristics, function, etc. In this passage, Adi, etc., refers to the manifestation, Vichupatthana. A reference to the path of purification, Visuddhimagga, may sound very scholarly. So let us refer to the manual of Abhidhamata Singha, which is very familiar to every monks and nuns, even to young novice in monastery, because the monastic education requires them all to learn it by heart. So in this Abhidhamata Singha, it mentions Lakkhana, Rasa, Vichupatthana, Padatthana Vasena, Namarupa, Pragho, Detti, Visuddhi, Nama. Purifications of view, Detti, Visuddhi means to discern mind and matter, mind and body in terms of their characteristics, function, manifestation, and approximate cause. At one time, a knowledgeable yogi reported to Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, Bande, I have found the passage from Abhidhamata manual is very comprehensive, that reads, purifications of view means to discern mind and body in terms of their characteristics, function, manifestation, and proximate cause. Because of failure to notice this passage, some Vipassana teachers are likely to teach their yogis to contemplate minute particles appearing cluster by cluster. Indeed, when we observe mind and body, we are expected to discern them in terms of their characteristics, function, or manifestation, but not by name, form, or shape. So if you ask me what you are expected to discern in the rising and falling of the abdomen, the answer would be the air elements, Vayodhatu. Then what to discern in the air elements is characteristics, function, or manifestation. Regarding its characteristics, you remember pressure, tightness, or looseness is the characteristics of Vayodhatu. So the characteristics of the air elements is pressure, tightness, or looseness. In this regard, commentary says, Vitambana Lakkhana Vayodhatu, pressure is the characteristics of air elements. In daily life, people describe it as tightness or looseness rather than as pressure. Pressure is sometimes used in the sense of supporting, like supporting a building to protect it from falling down. So now for your empirical knowledge, let us try one thing. You stretch out your arms and hold it for some time. And focus your mind on it. Now what you experience? You would experience tightness or stiffness. It is correct. That is what's literally described as pressure. Now you are sitting. Pay attention to your sitting with your waist straightened up. Observe it. What you experience, you can experience tightness around the waist. That is pressure in a technical term. And then pressure itself, when it's decreased in degree, is described as looseness. For example, suppose 3 ropes are stretched tight side by side, then any of them can be considered tight, moderately tight, or loose in comparison with the other 2. So depending on the degree of pressure, you describe the pressure as tightness or looseness. Such pressure is the characteristics of the air elements. In the beginning of the practice, however, the form or shape of the abdomen is all you can be aware of. We don't deny it because you have just started, but that is the first step. As soon as you begin to practice, it is impossible for you to attain Nivarana quickly, or even to discern Namarupa psychophysical phenomena, the first state of insight knowledge. As a beginner yogi, you have to struggle at all times with distracting thoughts or mental hindrances. Only when the mental hindrances are kept away for some time, will come out. Can there be the mental purification? Then you will start to discern the ultimate phenomena like tension, motion, and pressure, and so on, beyond the conceptual form or shape of the abdomen. So a yogi may not discern them as soon as they start to practice. However, the more continuously you are mindful, the less mental hindrances will arise. Then you will build up your concentration and be aware of tightness or pressure with the rising abdomen, and of looseness or constriction with the falling of the abdomen. Nobody can deny it. For sure, you would thus become aware of the air elements in terms of its characteristics. So we will continue next week. We have to stop our discuss for today by practicing Vipassana meditation, by observing every phenomena occurring at the six sense doors, by noting rising, falling, sitting, touching, stretching, bending, seeing, hearing, smelling, continuously and meticulously. May all yogis be liberated from all suffering. May all yogis realize the real peace in the very near future. So let us practice for sitting meditation for a few minutes.
Aviro Ami Avyavajo Ami Anigo Ami Sugiyadana Pariharami Mama Madabidu Acariyaca Yadi Vedaca Sabramacari Nojam Avira Hondo Abhyabaca Hondo Adiga Hondo Sukhiyadanam Ariyarandu Imazame Aramin Sabe Yoginam Avira Hondo Avyavaca Hondo Aniga Hondo Sughiyadanam Variyarandu Imazame Arame Sabe Veku Samaneraja Upasaka Upasikaya Avira Hondo Avyavaca Hondo Anika Hondo Sughiyadanam Variyarandu Amakam Jatu Vijaya Dayakam Avira Hondo Avyavaca Aniga Hondo Sigiyadanam Variyarandu Amaga Araga Devatam Imasame Vihare Imasame Avase Imasame Arame Araga Devatam Avira Hondo Avyavaja Hondo Aniga Hondo Sigiyadanam Variyarandu Sabe Saddam Sabe Vanam Sabe Buddha Sabe Bhogaram Sabe Adabhava Variyavanam Sabba Etiya Sabbe Buddhisam Sabbe Ariyam Sabbe Anariyam Sabbe Devam Sabbe Manasam Sabbe Vinivadikam Avira Hondo Avyavaja Hondo Aniga Hondo Sigiyadanam Variyarandu Yogamochandu Yadalada Sambadidam Mavigichandu Kamasagam Purati Maya Disaya Vajimaya Disaya Uttaraya Disaya Dakinaya Disaya Saya Uttaraya Nudisaya Daginaya Nudisaya Savevaya Disaya Uparimaya Disaya Sabe Satam Vevanam Vebuddham Sabe Bhogalam Sabe Atavava Ariyavana Sava Idiya Sabe Purisa Sabe Ariya Sabe Nariya Sabe Deva Sabe Manosa Sabe Vinivadiga Avira Hondu Avyavaja Hondu Aniga Hondu Siviyadana Variyarandu Dukkhamochandu Yadanatta Sambadita Bhavichandu Pamasakam Buddham Yawa Bhavagacha Adoya Yawa Vijita Samana Chakavalesu Ye Sada Badavichara Aryavacha Niveracha Nirokacha Nubhadava Udaya Vavagacha Adaya Vavijita Samana Chakavalesu Sada Udagejara Avyavacha Niveracha Nirokacha Nubhadava Buddhaya wa bhavagacha Adoya wa avijito Samanta Chekavalesu Yesata Akasejara Abhyavacha Niveracha Nirogacha Nuvadawa Himaya Dhammanu Dhammavadivadiya Buddha Ujemi Himaya Dhammanu Dhammavadivadiya Dhamma Ujemi Himaya Dhammanu Dhammavadivadiya Santa Ujemi Himaya Dhammanu Dhammavadivadiya Madhamidara Ujemi Himaya Dhammanu Dhammavadivadiya Acariye Ujemi Adaimaya Adivadaya Jaramaranama Adimojesami Idame Punyam Asavakayawaham Odu Idame Silam Megabala Nyanasa Pacaya Odu Imano Punyavagam Savasadanam Demam Savisada Sukita Ondu